Hey, before we start the show, I wanted to invite you to join our first ever virtual community running challenge. We're calling it the Summer Running Challenge. It starts July 14th and goes all the way through to August 11th, which is the end of the Olympics, the closing ceremony day, so that's easy to remember. And this is how it works. We're going to put a link in the show notes for this episode. Click on it, and then you can sign up for a mileage-based goal that you think you might be able to attain in that 28-day period. Or you can keep it open if you don't want the pressure of having to hit a certain number of miles. Sign up for it. We're going to send you a t-shirt, an exclusive Marathon Handbook t-shirt, which is quite nice. I've got one. They're pretty nicely designed. They're really nice. And you're also going to be entered in to win a slew of prizes. We're going to do like weekly mini prize packs. And then we've got one big grand prize package that includes Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 shoes. Shout out to Saucony for throwing those in there. And as well as Suunto Sonic headphones and a backpack, prize pack from KT Tape. I think getting another shirt as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff going to be in there. So we're also going to have a Strava group. So you can log your mileage really easily, and a Facebook group so we can have a little bit of community chatter as well. I know me and the rest of the gang at Marathon Handbook are also going to participate in this. So we'll share what we're doing, some tips and that sort of thing along the way. So this is for all ability levels. Doesn't really matter what you're going to hit in terms of your mileage goal. We just thought it would be fun to motivate the community to get out and keep running, especially during the dog days of summer. And we thought it'd be a fun thing to try. So again, you can find a link to join our challenge in the show notes, or go to our website, marathonhandbook.com, where you'll find a link, or just go to raceroster.com and search Summer RUNNIN Challenge. So running without the G, RUNNIN Challenge. All right. Look forward to seeing you there. And it's going to be a fun summer. Let's get to the show. I'm joined by my colleagues, Katelyn, Tocci, and Alex Cyr, my teammates, my partners in crime. Guys, this week we're going to talk about whether or not you should get a coach. When is the right time to get a coach? How much it costs, how much it should cost, how to break up with a coach if it's not working out, and all sorts of other fun questions. Before that, we're going to chat about the indie shoe brand, the rise of the indie shoe maker. Alex did a great video unpacking four of these shoes by three different makers. And Alex, we're going to pick your brain about your thoughts on the small fry making a shoe and whether or not every runner or runners should take a risk at it. But first, guys, how you doing? How's it going, Alex? I hear you're doing workouts.
This is fresh. This is from 2 days ago.
Oh.
I kind of psyched myself into doing workouts. So I have a coach now. We'll get into this later.
Yep.
And so he sends me my training plan on an app. And so this week, it was Tuesday, we're adding some quality. I think that's what he said. We're adding some quality. And so he gave me this little workout to do, nothing big, a minute, 45 seconds, 2 by 30 seconds, 4 by 15 seconds inside of an easy run. And so I completely prepped myself for this. I put on my super trainers. I drank a bunch of water, had some BioSteel, everything. Went out there. It's 35 with humidity.
Celsius, not 35 Fahrenheit.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's freezing cold in July. I think what's 35 in Fahrenheit, like close to 100 probably.
Yeah, 90s you're talking. Yeah.
So I'm cooking out there, and my easy running part is like pretty fast because I'm running on carbon, and then I rip through these little minuters and come back, and I'm sweating, and I just go in the app and say, all right, killed it. Oh, heart rate was high, but it was good. And then he answers with like, dude, this was supposed to be pretty chill. Like what were you doing?
Like strides.
They were strides.
Yeah.
I think that's what he said. It's like, I think these were supposed to be strides, but anyway, so I have the same workout today because it's like two like somewhat quality sessions early in the training plan. So my goal for today is to just chill out a little bit. So hopefully this podcast just zaps the energy out of my legs and forces me not to go so fast.
I've got a workout this evening as well that I'm all fired up for. And I'm doing minute on, minute off 15 times, which sounds it's like, hey, just 15 minutes of running a little bit harder. But if you've ever done that, it's kind of a classic fartlek type workout where you do like, you're just sort of changing the gears with very short intervals of equal rest. And I'm afraid of those minutes.
The rests are short.
Yeah, it's 1 minute on,
short.
1 minute off. Yeah. So it's just anyway. I'm lathered up. I'm getting into it. I ran about 11 miles, 17 and change K last night. I had one of those runs. I don't know if you guys have like a favorite running route where you go out. Maybe it's getting a little dark. You've left the run to the end of the day. It's the evening. And you hit your route and it's getting dark when you're running back, but it's just you're alone. There's no one else out there. It's very cerebral. You're in your own head. I had one of those runs last night, one of those like magical summer runs. So I'm feeling
those are
fired
good,
up.
man. Okay. Little spoilers. This morning I recorded a video about my favorite workouts. You just robbed one from me. That's on my list. Literally
Is
the
it really?
15 times, 1 minute hard, 1 minute easy. Because
Really?
it is a staple. Yeah. Yeah. How do you take your easy minutes though? Easy running pace or like shuffle?
Good question. I think it depends on, and this, not to throw too much to later on in our chat talking about coaching, but like, I like to ask myself the question, like, what's the purpose of this run? So it really kind of depends on what system you're trying to tax, like how fast you're supposed to run those 1 minutes. I think if it's like a VO2 max type workout, which I think kind of tonight should be, I think you have to take the easier. And if it's more of a lactate threshold thing, you kind of like, it's sort of cruise intervals, like we've talked in the past about the Monaghetti, the Mona workout, something similar to that, where it's like you're just sort of shifting gears back and forth. I think this one's going to be a barn burner. I'm hoping I get to shuffle for the 60 seconds in between. We'll see. We'll have a team meeting before me and the group of guys that I run with will go out and embark on this.
Oh, you have a team to do it together.
We have
That's
a
nice.
small team, a dwindling team, an aging team. Yeah,
that's helpful though.
Yeah. Katelyn, what's going on with you? How's the pain cave? How's the sweat box of Costa Rica?
No, I feel like I'm in the pain cave. My volume's creeping up, and I had hills this morning, and I'm doing, the hill workout, and I'm just like, why do I end up with like 15 kilometers at the end of this workout? Like, it just seems like a lot. And then tonight I've got a shakeout run, trying to do a couple of doubles a week, trying to like do something a little different with this training season to up the volume. I think it was Alex who inspired me to up my volume.
Nice.
Why?
Why?
Because you don't. That's why.
You want to end up injured in a month?
Because Alex is like, well, my 140K weeks. And I'm like, 140K? Holy moly. No. I would never get up to that level. But anyway, just doing some like tougher workouts and some VO2 max stuff, some intervals on Tuesday, and then hill work on Thursday. So I kind of just like I feel the heavy legs today by the end of the day. So hopefully the shakeout run will help me so I can do my double back-to-back long run and not feel so horrible. The long runs, like it shouldn't be this, but the long runs are like relief. Because it's like, I can just kind of, coast through the mountains at a nice, easy pace. It's like during the week stuff that's really hard.
You know what? I'll be doubling today as well. This will be an interesting test to see if any of the guys I run with ever listen to this podcast, because if they do, next week they'll call me on this and they'll be like, dude, you doubled on a workout day. What are you doing? But my wife, okay, so a little behind the curtain here. I've got a 6-year-old. So my wife also runs pretty obsessively as well. She's training for New York. I'm training for Chicago. So we're slightly out of phase. And we just typically do the like baton handoff every morning. Like I run at like 5 or whatever, and she runs at 6. Yeah. And that's the way it goes. So we never get to run together anymore. And her parents were staying with us overnight. So they offered to kind of do the morning routine with our son. So we were able to get out and run this morning. So she last night was like, do you want to run together? And I'm like, oh, I've got a workout tomorrow night, but yeah, okay. So that's why I ended up, I doubled for love, guys. So
Oh, that's nice. That's
yeah.
romantic.
So let's talk briefly before we get into our big two topics of the day. Let's chat a little bit about hard rock.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Yes,
Katelyn, you're
tomorrow.
fired up about this. Like,
Yeah, I'm
so
fired up.
for those listening who maybe they've heard they've heard of the race, they've heard their ultra trail nerd friends talking about it, but maybe are not super familiar with it. Like,
Yep.
what is hard rock, and why should we care about it?
Hard Rock, okay, which will kick off tomorrow, 6 a.m. Mountain Time, is a race that takes place in Silverton, Colorado.
Okay.
And it is basically thought of as the most difficult or one of the most difficult 100 milers. So to get into Hard Rock is also tough. Only 146 competitors compete in Hard Rock. So it's a very, very small pool there of runners. Hard to get in, lottery, all that stuff. But what makes Hard Rock so difficult, there are just a lot of factors to it. You've got to climb 33,000 feet. It's 102.5 miles, so it's a little bit more than the 100 miler. It is one big, great loop. But what you're doing is you're, trekking up and down mountains so much that, you've got, changes in climate. Usually there's snow. You've got to deal with snow. This year they're saying there's going to be no snow because the weather has melted away all the snow. But you can get some pretty severe weather changes there, animals on the course that might be kind of unexpected. It's really rugged. It's steep. It's tough. You've got to do like bouldering there, kind of like getting over rocks and stuff. You got to cross rivers. There's just, if you watch any pieces of this 100 mile, you just know that it's super, super tough, and it takes a really tough person to do it. And if you look at things like, the cutoff's 48 hours, 2 days. And if you think about the average time is just under 40 hours, the
Wow.
average time. And the records are over 20 hours. And
Wow.
so I know that kind of sounds like, oh, well, yeah, that's still a pretty good time. But when you think of Western states that just passed, and we spoke about that, it was 14 hours,
Yeah.
So it's a really, really big difference. It's a super tough race.
Yeah, I like the idea of, snow, lightning, mountain lions inserted into my running event. That sounds glorious. Actually, it's a pretty spectacular event following it over the years.
Yep.
There is a live stream of it as well, right?
Yep, there's a live stream. I think Jesse's gonna post that for us right on the site.
Yeah,
So we'll
I think
have that
if she
for
hasn't
viewers.
already, it will go out. I think by the time you listen to this podcast, there will be we'll have a story up on how you can live stream it on our site, and we'll be doing some coverage as well. We'll watch it pretty closely because it's an exciting race.
Yep.
I know Courtney Dauwalter is coming back, and
Yep.
so sort of again behind the curtain here. Before we started recording, we were chatting about Courtney Dauwalter, and I was like, I just think Courtney Dauwalter is amazing, but am I just regurgitating what everyone else is saying here? Like, so I'll pose the question to you, Katelyn, because you're
Yeah.
like you're a Dauwalter stan.
Super fan.
What's her deal, and like why she's so special?
Yeah, well, Courtney Dauwalter, at first people think like, oh, she's an idol for women trail runners. So she's an idol for all trail runners. She's an idol for all runners, just someone that everyone looks up to. And if you watch just one interview or one short video of her that she's done, I don't know, with anyone at home or before a race or just with Salomon even, there's nothing not to like about this runner. And not only is she amazing and incredibly humble, but she's just so down to earth. She's the superstar. She's the GOAT of ultra running. And she's, just so absolutely down to earth. So her interviews are really, really nice to listen to. And you would get that like feeling from her immediately, no matter what. But, to back all that up, yeah, you can be, the sweetest, the most humble, the nicest person in the world. But I mean, she has all these records and these incredible times, and she's just smashed course records all over the place. She wins races, and she comes in like hours in front of number two, in front of the competitors. So it's just a whole nother level of racing that we're seeing with Courtney. For example, last year she had one of her biggest years. 2023, she ran like the trifecta of three of the most prominent and most important 100 milers in the world. So she ran Western States, came in first place, set a course record. 3 weeks later, and I'm not athletes, do not do this.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, do not do this. 3 weeks later, Hard Rock 100, toughest 100 miler, most rugged 100 miler, won it, course record. Okay. Then in the same summer season, she runs UTMB and wins UTMB. She has the UTMB course record. She didn't get in 2023. I think it was in 2021, but she's just smashing these records all over the place. She's, pushing through these super tough races, coming in first place. She's getting top 10s, top 5s, top 3s in general, not in the women's field. We're talking about coming in second place, coming in third place in general in a race. So she's just someone that she's an inspiration to everybody, and she works super hard for it. She's someone who, mentioning that she's so down to earth, you listen to her interviews and she's just like, I spend a lot of time in the pain cave. Like in a race, I suffer a whole lot. Like I'm always just trying to problem solve and to get through the next problem. And each race, like she said that her goal for this race tomorrow is just to have a little less time during those lows, like to have less low, not to have a perfect race. She said, I think it's impossible. I just want to suffer a little less than I suffered in the past 2 years. And you're like, wow. It's just like, that's where, so she's always pushing, even though you see her and maybe some of the shots you'll see at the races and, she's smiling and sometimes not, but, she's always pushing. She says that she likes to work at the limit. And I love this about her. She's always trying to compete on her absolute threshold. Like, if I push a little harder, will I get that low? Okay, I pushed, I'm in the low, but I got to work through it. And then I'm going to push again, and then I'm going to hit another low. And then, but she's always going to play like on the edge while she's competing.
Now, like, there's this thing that happens in sports that when an outlier comes, they rock the world for a year, maybe 2 years, and then eventually someone reaches their level, or they fall down to the level of others. It's, I think, really rare to see someone dominate like she has for so long. Is this happening? Like, is there a Dauwalter slayer out there, or is she just going to remain an anomaly forever?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, we do have amazing competitors out there, but it's really difficult for me to think that someone with, even the amazing runners out there, Katie Scheid in Western, or Katie Scheid who just ran, and we're having, there are a couple really prominent French runners, women who are running in tomorrow's race as well. I have the competitors here, but Katarina Hartmann, she's supposed to be up there. Camilla Bruges, like we've got from Germany and from France. We've got two super important women in the race tomorrow. But sometimes I think, I don't know. Even though these awesome runners are out there, like if Courtney has a really good day, are they going to be able to beat her yet? Like, of course, everyone can be beat and everyone can have a bad day. But it's almost like I feel like if Courtney's there and she has a good day or she even has an okay day, I feel like it's going to be really tough to beat her. But of course, there are amazing runners out there. I mean, Katie Scheid, she's not running tomorrow, but she has been like smashing, races all over the place as well. She's doing amazingly.
So yeah, this is like, it's like Kipchoge if he won the Olympic marathon, broke 2 hours in the marathon, and then also set the world record at a marathon major all in the same season. It's kind of like the Dauwalter year last year in the ultra world. Yep. And also just seems like a really nice person, which is kind of rare for someone who is that kind of compelled to dominate, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's exciting. So
super exciting.
So our pod goes live on Friday morning. So by the time you are listening to this, actually, this will sync really well with like if you're one of the eager beavers that listens at 5 o'clock in the morning when this pod drops at Eastern time, that will be just before Hard Rock officially starts. So.
Yeah, or right after, I think, because I think Hard Rock starts at my time in Costa Rica. So we're 2 hours before.
Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah. So I think it'll be, but I don't think anyone will get up on the East Coast at that time. No. So it doesn't matter.
And if it's, if the winners are coming in at around 20 plus hours,
Yeah.
There's all kinds of time for you to peek in on the live stream. So just
Listen to us first, and then
that's right. And then
And then you can-
go to our site, find the link for the live stream, follow along, and also we'll be doing some live updates probably, and also a recap as well of who the winners were. We'll pull some video and that sort of fun stuff. All right, guys, why don't we take a break and then we'll roll right into our first big segment of the pod, which is the indie shoe. Should you buy one? Should you run in one? Should you trust one? And some of these companies that are popping up with new shoes. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Our next segment of the pod, the indie running shoe. Okay, it's a thing that's popped up, I'd say, in the last few years, and there were a few different brands that came onto your radar, Alex, and you made a video about them. You initially entitled it 3 Misfit Shoe Brands, and you looked at 4 different shoes that we got in the mail, came across the desk for reviewing, and they all happen to be indie shoe brands or indie brands that have decided to launch a shoe, which is even more risky and interesting. So we thought it'd be an interesting topic to scratch away at and talk about and kind of unpack a little bit. So first, let's talk about like what were the 3 different brands that you looked at for the video, and then we can talk a little bit about each of the shoe very briefly, and then we can talk about the subject overall more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, 3 brands, 4 shoes, 3 brands, right?
Yeah.
And the first one I had to pick because we actually met these people in Boston. We got to try on one of their shoes. We chatted for like an hour hearing their story. The company's called Rabbit. If you're from the States, maybe you've heard of it before. The Canadian equivalent and maybe the worldwide equivalent at this point is Lululemon. So they were like this brand or this apparel company that pivoted into shoes pretty recently. I'd say what Rabbit did with their shoes, which is I think better than what Lululemon did, is they created a shoe. So it's called the Dream Chaser. That is made for this era of running shoes and runners. Because now we're in the carbon phase, right? There needs to be a carbon plate in the shoes. They don't necessarily have a carbon plate, but I'll get into that. They need to have super foam, which they both have. So the shoe is like, it's a really cool, like niche, stylish looking shoe. You see the top at first. It's like really tightly knit and almost like has a thick upper. And then underneath are these like tracks. They call them carbon tracks that when you hit the ground, it goes like, tack, tack. It's like a funny little sound, but basically it's like a carbon plate outside of the shoe, which is a little strange. And then they have their own like super foam that's a little bit more responsive, a little lighter than the classic EVA foam that you'd have in your regular shoes. And then inside of it is this blue maca insole. Anyway, there's a lot of thought that went into the shoe. So this insole has been used in shoes, court shoes, soccer cleats, that type of thing, and they're actually made from the recycled materials of the foam used for the shoes. So it's a really thoughtful shoe. It's a little bit heavy. It's really nice looking. I thought I'd take it out for a run. It's not a super shoe, but I think it's a really good first attempt at a shoe. And if nothing else, they're pretty stylish. So that's one of them I included. The second one, I'll save the craziest one maybe for the end. The second one, people probably already know about it. It's the Elliott Runner from Tracksmith. So kind of same thing with Tracksmith, actually. Like they've become known for their apparel. They're based out of New England. So Rabbit based out of California, Tracksmith out of New England. And the shoe, so I actually really like the look of it. It's kind of like their clothing, where it has this New England feel to it, the 2 stripes, the navy blue. But it's a weird shoe to run in because I think I've become used to a lot of these new shoes from other brands. Like, Hoka is very much like this. On is a little bit like this, that have a rock forward profile and kind of propel you onto your toes. Mm-hmm. The Tracksmith shoes are more like Vans. Vans?
Yeah.
Like okay. The lifestyle
skater shoe.
The skater shoe that's turned into like the lifestyle brand. Yeah.
They're flat. Okay. They're like They don't really rock you forward.
Like running in a pair of Converse.
Like kind of, but they have the like the Pebax foam, which is what Nike uses apparently, or type of foam that Nike uses in their super
ZoomX
shoes.
foam, yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell there's a bounce to it, but the shape of it is weird. Anyway, I use them as my casuals. I have for months now, just because I love how they look. But to me, they didn't really work as running shoes. I'm excited to try out their super shoe, which also came out around that time, like earlier this year. But we haven't been able to try one yet because the sample's pretty limited. But that one's called the Elliott Racer. But anyway, that was the Elliott Runner from Tracksmith. And then this one, I think this is like Michael's favorite shoe that he doesn't really want to talk about yet.
It's my keeps
texting me about
my curiosity of the moment. Yes, I keep texting you about it. It's on my mind. Yeah, sorry, go on. I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, Michael can't stop. It's like, oh my God, I need to talk about this.
I need to talk about this shoe.
It's called Mount to Coast. Mount to Coast. It's a company based out of Hong Kong. They apparently have shoe engineers that have worked with companies that we know well. So I think New Balance, Brooks, maybe even Nike.
Yeah, I think Nike as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And they've made these two shoes that are super sleek looking. They're nearly all white. They're tough to differentiate from each other. There's the R1 and the S1. So the R1 is more of the racer style of shoe and the S1 is more of the training shoe. And they're made to service a weird problem that I can't say I've ever had. Maybe Katelyn has.
Okay.
Are
they trail shoes?
Well,
they're not trail shoes.
Not.
They're road shoes.
They're long road race shoes. And the pitch for them is almost so weird. It's like, have you ever run a race so long that your shoes disintegrate and you have to wear a couple different pairs? No. Fear not. We have this one pair that'll last you for hundreds of miles without taking them off. And I'm like, all right.
Oh my goodness.
Cool. Now I felt like kind of a fraud to do a review about it. And I said this in the video. It's like, well, I didn't use them to their full purpose because it's like, I think they're marked on the website as like shoes best for 100+ mile efforts. And I'm like, well, I'll let you know when I try one of those. But so the thing is, they have a dense foam. They have a layer of like bouncy light foam that makes them feel kind of like super trainers. And then another layer of foam that's just like super dense and hard to step through, basically. And I tried the R1, the S1. They make for fine, just regular running shoes. Like go for an hour-long run on the road. Yeah, and they don't feel like, ooh, these are made for something else. They're made for the road. I think their claim to fame so far is that one of their athletes wore these shoes for this race called the Jogle, which is an 850-mile race in Scotland, and broke the record by 40 hours.
40
okay,
hours.
all right, hold the phone.
So if I can,
it's a race. It's. I think it's like a race. Is it a race? It's like this self-supported
like a
pilgrimage. Yeah, it is like. I think it's pretty much the entire like vertical length of the United Kingdom, pretty much. Wow. I think you go all the way down, don't you? Okay. Anyway, it's 800 and something miles, and you can break the record by almost 2 days, apparently. But
just don't sleep as much.
Just keep going. You sleep on the side of the road in a ditch.
This is your dream.
My dream is just to run, lay down, sleep on the side of the road, and get up, keep going. We all have our dreams. These shoes to me. Okay, so when I received a test pair, I'm looking at them and I'm noticing there's like all these little details about them that are really nicely done. Like they've got 2 sets of these very thin little shoelaces that they've got for kind of like just getting the tightness around your foot just right, which would make a lot of sense if you're running 800 miles in them, because you want to make sure your foot's going to swell. And over 800 miles, your foot's going to swell.
It's going to fall asleep.
Yeah, a few times and then wake back up and then fall asleep again.
Yep.
And so it's got, and just all these like little fine touches to it. And also I think the foam is pretty good. It's a proprietary foam, which I know you noted in your video, Alex. So like, always a good sign when a company is actually doing a little bit of R&D itself. It means they're investing a little bit in what they're doing. They're trying to differentiate themselves a little bit. And they look good, and they look really good. And maybe I'm just getting kind of sucked in by the design, but I'm fascinated by this shoe, by this brand. I don't know do they last? Do they survive? It's such a, like, there must be what? There must be dozens of people around the world that need a shoe that can last over 200 or 300 miles on the road.
Cousins, I like that.
Right?
That's the issue, I think, is when I compared these four types of shoes, the Mount to Coast ones, both pairs were the best, but their sales pitch is so arcane that I don't know if they'll make it. But I mean, maybe this is my advertisement to them, or for people listening. It's like, they're fine shoes for things other than the trail. But also, that's the thing, right? If you're looking to buy shoes, why would you buy an indie pair of running shoes? Like, that's what I'm still struggling with. And I know that for myself, I wouldn't, right? I would look at Hoka, On, Nike, Saucony, New Balance. I'm pretty shoe agnostic, but I think I'm also a little bit, I limit myself to the brands that have been tried and true for the last decade plus.
I go back to, like, I think the two big success stories, say in the last 10 or 15 years with indie brands that kind of made it, were, as you mentioned, On and Hoka. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And both of those brands started off making a shoe first and foremost. And I'd say Hoka, for the most part, is still just a shoe brand. And On does shoes, but also a really nice apparel line as well.
Yeah.
And both companies started off because their founders had this very specific vision for servicing a certain type of runner with a specific design of a shoe, right? I love the origin story of On, that, like, I think it was like around 2010. The founder, this Swiss dude, Olivier, he was like a Nike athlete, I guess. He was a triathlete guy. And he was like staring at his garden hose in his backyard and was like, there's something about the garden hose that, like, could make a great midsole. And then he, like, came up with this idea. I think he's an engineer by education as a background, and pitched it to Nike, and they're like, you're insane. Thanks, but no thanks. And so he came up with the On Cloud Tech is basically inspired by a garden hose, right?
Okay. Right.
But, like, hey, it worked. And also he and his co-founders were able to pitch this as a very specific concept that then took off. And, you look at the trajectory of a company like On, or in Hoka's case, a little bit different. On is a company that kind of started to develop its own thing, then picked up some private equity investment. And I think Roger Federer dumped a bunch of money into it as well, because he was looking to be kind of like, one of these ultra rich pro athlete celebrity types who's looking to seed a bit of his money in an investment and then also get behind it to kind of like supercharge it. And then they go out and they try to find big private equity investment, and then they IPO it, right? Then they take it to the public market and they put it on the New York Stock Exchange. And they raise capital for it. And in On's case, they went from being a very small company to being a company with an evaluation of many billions of dollars, and now are one of the big players in the shoe market in a very short period of time. And, like, we're talking under 10 years from start to finish, right? Mm-hmm. And in Hoka's case, they were purchased by Deckers, the clothing conglomerate based out of California, bought them and basically turned them into a juggernaut with their marketing savvy and their ability to produce large volume and get it and also distribute that large volume as well, right? So, like, kind of a peek behind the curtain of, like, where some of these companies perhaps hope to go. Like, I look at Tracksmith and I wonder kind of where their next move is. And I think, not to get too, like, business insider here, but they've got some private equity money behind them. Private equity firms are always kind of like, we want to see our 10x investment over this amount of time. There's certainly a lot of pressure on Tracksmith to become a bit more mainstream. I'm assuming the shoe thing is their part of their strategy, but, like, that first shoe was not a very good running shoe. I'll say it. I mean, you've been very diplomatic about it, Alex, because I think you like the brand overall, and I like the brand too. They're a cool brand. They're a brand I want to like more than I do like when it comes to using their products. But, and I think the same goes for the shoe, right? The shoe is like, it's a walking shoe. It's not a running shoe. And the super shoe could be make or break for them in the shoe with the shoe world, right? So
You
really
feel like time
interesting
is
to see.
ticking for Tracksmith. Yeah, they need a big swing,
A
but
lot of pressure.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, but I think you're totally right, Michael. It's like you need more in this day and age than word of mouth. Like Mount to Coast needs a helper or an angel or something. It's more than just, us talking about it on a podcast and someone else talking about it. The competition is too strong. I was actually surprised. I thought about this, like, how is it that there are still indie running shoes sprouting up from all over the place in 2024 as we are still in the midst of maybe the biggest like era or the greatest era of shoe development in history between 2017 and now. You still have shoes that are trying to enter the game. Some of them are making fools of themselves. Like the more I think about it, and again, maybe I am being too diplomatic. I was nice to Lululemon in my video about them, but I go back and I think about it after seeing these couple indie shoes, especially the rabbit shoe that comes from a similar type of company and background, and think Lululemon is huge. They could have put in some better foam in there. They could have put in some carbon in there. The more I think about it, I'm like, they kind of made a fool of themselves. The market's moving so quickly and they just release this whatever shoe.
Yeah. And they try to like, it's like hocus pocus. They're trying to like, it's like the Jedi mind trick. It's like, this is the shoe that you want to buy, and they're very good at it. They've got good marketing hype, right? And they try to legitimize themselves by doing events like the 6-day race thing, which I think was a cool event. And
Yeah, it was
I think
cool.
it's neat that they did it. But I mean, it's totally just like the cynical part of me is like, that's just a gigantic ad for this shoe to say this, there's science behind the shoe. See?
It worked.
And it works to a degree, right? But
Yeah.
I don't think that shoe is very good. And I think they can do better. And like when you look at their roster of shoe development talent that they've got, I mean, they've got in like legal trouble stealing talent from Nike, and I believe Adidas as well, but certainly Nike, and Nike's suing them over patents and that sort of thing because they feel like that their talent that they borrowed also took some of that technology as well, but then it just doesn't deliver in the end product, which is so weird. And I'm not like their brand ethos, their philosophy, their brand identity aside, because I have complex feelings about that. Their actual products for the most part perform really well. Like they buy good fabric, they procure good fabrics, their cuts are good. Like the prices are ridiculous, but the products themselves work. Their men's half tight, one of the best pair of shorts I've ever worn in my entire life. Like just a killer pair of shorts.
I'm wearing them right now.
That's super weird.
Yeah.
The things we can get away with when we're podcasting, not wearing pants. Yeah. But anyway, so not to turn this into like a condemnation of Lululemon's shoe practices, but like, I think Rabbit is an interesting company because they're an interesting comp to compare Rabbit with Lululemon. I'm sure the nice folks at Rabbit are like, we'll take that comp all day long because we'd love to be Lululemon one day. Mm-hmm. But yeah, similar sort of like trajectory of like small Lululemon. Once upon a time, it was a small yoga brand being sold out of like yoga studios in Vancouver and then turned into this, like, they're like, we need to solve a problem that exists, which is there's just not yoga specific clothes being made for people who actually do yoga seriously. And this was the origin story of Rabbit as well, right? Like they were like, they've got a running shop in Santa Barbara, California. And the woman who owns the shop, Monica DeVries, I think her name is, she and a couple of other, her co-founders were like, what is with running apparel? It doesn't work. Like it doesn't
comfortable. It doesn't fit right.
Yeah.
Right. That was more like they wanted to kind of take it back to the simpler times and have simple items that just like fit nicely and,
And I think this might be
comfortable.
That might have been the initial idea behind the shoe that they designed. But then I think what ends up happening is you start thinking about like volume, right? You start thinking about like, we need to sell a certain number of these shoes for this to be a break even venture, or even to just like kind of break through to some degree. So you start designing something that's for everyone and not for a specific runner in mind, right? And I think when you start to design something for everyone, you end up with the rabbit shoe, you end up with the Lululemon shoe, you end up with the Tracksmith Elliott Runner as well, which is like not really a shoe for anyone. But I think the rabbit one's the closest, right, Alex?
Between those three, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. It's the one that I prefer between the three.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of these companies have managed to break away from the clientele of people who are going to buy their stuff anyway because they love the brand, right? The Tracksmith people will buy Tracksmith. The Lulu people will buy Lulu. That's why I'm kind of rooting for Mount to Coast. I don't think there are any Mount to Coast people just yet. And so that's why it makes it kind of awesome. You buy those shoes because you believe in the shoes. You've tried them on and you thought that they were great. So I don't know. We don't know that. We should say that we don't know all that much about that company, right? They're a relative unknown. They're across the world, but I'm rooting for them. And I will never run a 100+ mile race, at least not in the next few years, but I'm rooting for them.
Never say never, Alex.
Oh God.
Okay.
You don't know what's going to happen to you in your running journey, Alex.
Still so young. There's just so much ahead of you,
Oh
Alex.
boy. Yeah.
Come
Plenty
on,
of
man.
time to be ruined.
How cool, like what a romantic vision. Like you go on this great quest where you're like, you know what I'm going to do for the next week is I'm just going to run every day for as much as I can on the side of this like old highway in wherever in rural, say Canada, or you go to Scotland or whatever. And I'm just going to carry a bivy sack in my little backpack. And at the end of the day, when the sun's going down and I can't move anymore, I'm just going to roll over into the ditch, open the bivy sack, climb in, eat a bar, and then go to sleep and then get up and do it again the next day.
There is something romantic about that. The best story I ever heard of a bunch of, I would want to do it with friends. The best story I ever heard of friends going for an unlimited run was from this guy who's from my province in Canada, who had gone down to the United States, had driven to Florida with 3 friends and stopped every day on the side of the road to run 2 hours. And by the time they'd get to Florida, they would actually begin the training camp, but this was as maintenance. But by the time they'd made it to Georgia, all of them had developed stress fractures. So they got in the van, they turned around and went back home.
So the training camp was the drive down. Not
the destination was the journey all along or something like that.
Except probably not a great end result.
No.
Okay, so let's wrap this one up by, I think my feeling with this is, because, we've all tested a lot of shoes over the years and worn a lot of shoes as runners over the years. I think you got to give them a chance. I think if you like the look of the shoe, the idea of the shoe, and kind of like what the brand's trying to do, and if you believe in that, chuck them some money. What's the worst that could happen? They turn into a pair of walking shoes, right?
Yep. Casual shoes.
All right, let's take a quick break and then we'll get into our final topic of the day. Everything you need to know about finding a coach. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Guys, I'm just going to put it to you point blank. Should you get a coach? Yes or no?
Of course.
It's like
Katelyn's
these.
like, yeah, me.
Me.
I am available.
I do have sound reason, but yes, of course you should get a running coach.
Alex, you just got a running coach probably for the
Yeah.
first time in quite a while.
In a long time.
You're feeling the vibes right now? You're pro coach?
Yeah, I'm feeling the vibes. I mean, I think I just did like most college runners do. In college, you have a coach, then you finish. And unless you're going into the pro ranks and stick with a team or a professional coach, you just go and try to figure it out a little bit on your own. And I found some success in doing that. So I think I would latch on to that for years afterwards and think, well, I know how to pull it off. But my issue is I was getting injured a whole lot. So yeah, a coach. I mean, if you listen to this podcast now, you're well versed into my coaching story. Is that one of our greatest listeners is John LaFranco, who's a coach here in Canada, and he listened to the pod. He sent me a message. He says, "You don't have a coach? Let's talk." And then we had a coffee chat. Long story short, he became my coach. So for about a month now or so, we've been working together, and he's helped me actually build from zero running, coming back from injury, to like little workouts this week, as I mentioned. So yeah, so far I'm pro coach.
So far,
We're 30 days in. Well, we're going to do another check-in in a few more months.
we'll see how he does after a race or two.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, it's been good. I mean, we'll get into this, but it's just it's nice to have that accountability. Not that I was not gonna do my runs, but it's nice to just like communicate them with someone and just send a message. Okay, this felt pretty good. Oh, felt crappy today. I don't know. It's nice, especially when you're usually training on your own.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like, it's not just a you don't need to just have a coach because it's something that we're telling you, like, oh, you should absolutely have a coach. Like, let's give some reasons why. So accountability obviously is a big one, right? It's somebody, you've got a sounding board. It's kind of like having an adult in the room. There's someone kind of overseeing what you're doing, making sure you're not going to get too carried away, or if you're not pushing yourself hard enough to like kind of give you that motivational nudge towards maybe making sure you get out there and running the program, that sort of thing. What are some other reasons why having a coach is a super valuable idea for a runner of any level?
Yeah, I think, of course, everyone knows I'm a running coach, but I have also always had a running coach. And I think, so I'm also thinking of it from that side, because I'm not my own coach. I mean, that is a terrible idea. I think, I think that's a really bad idea, because then I'm just going back to, if I'm coaching myself, even though I'm a trained coach, then I'm still going to do the same things that I would do if I didn't have a coach. So it kind of, I've always had a coach. And I think what I probably like the best is that I obviously, will have a training plan, personalized, done for me, tailored to my specific goals, my schedule, my level. If anything happens during that time, things can be adjusted all the time. And the communication more than anything else. I think with my athletes, I think that's maybe what they most look forward to, and what I look forward to as well is when we have like our sit downs, or they send me a message and they say, this felt great, this didn't feel so great. Okay, well, maybe we should do this many reps instead of this many reps if you really felt burnt out by rep 8 and there were 10. Or I don't know, there's just so much that a coach can do to personalize your specific training, for beginners or experienced runners. Like, you want to do a time goal in a marathon. You want to do some like super aggressive time goal for you. Well, first you got to figure out with your coach if that's even a goal that's accessible to you, which is something to do right off the bat. Because, you can't just say, I'm going to run a sub-3 marathon in my next marathon, no matter what. Well, did you take a test to see if you have the fitness ability to get there right now? Do you have the base training for that? Do you have the speed? Do you have the endurance? So, kind of like having the coach help you figure out the goal and then reach the goal. And then totally, on the other side of it, someone who's just starting out, like Alex was saying, like maybe you would do too much too fast, or Michael said you do too much too fast, or you wouldn't push yourself hard enough. So someone who's there all the time to kind of figure out all those ins and outs and just make it absolutely personalized for you. I think that's kind of like number one.
Yeah, somebody who offers also can kind of come to you and say, here is my philosophy, my approach. Here's the structure that I provide. Here's the plan we like to use. I've been doing this for X number of years. We've had this level of success with different athletes. And here's the ideas, the science behind how I program this training. Yeah. And, obviously if you're a newer athlete, you may not have newer to running, you may not have that experience. So you don't know what's going to fit and what's going to work for you and what's not, but at least you can have that confidence that this person knows what they're talking about and has had some success with other athletes. When do you guys consider when is a good time to get a coach? Is the answer always like just whenever? Is it because I think particularly for listeners who maybe are newer to running and maybe think a coach is for someone who's more experienced or has specific or bigger or harder goals, or, isn't just running for fun or recreationally, but is, more competitive. Like like kind of like in the realm of either of you, or even better. But is a coach a good idea for somebody who started running, at some point in the last, say, like year or two, and is contemplating their first half marathon? Like they've not even run an event yet.
No, I mean, Michael, thinking about a first half marathon, about 4 of my athletes right now, or my runners right now, are learning to run with me. Like
Wow.
we're
Okay.
going for a 5K. We're doing like, and I love this that these people looked for me to help them learn how to run from the very beginning, because I think people get very ambitious and they'll just start off not doing it right and say, oh, I want to go out and run 5K. I'm going to run as far as I can on the first day and just kind of like see where it takes me. And I'm doing these different programs because everyone's a little different. Everyone's at a bit of a different fitness level. So I'm doing different programs for each one, but all thinking about like getting to that first 5K race. And it's very cool because I love having beginner runners, which is a good chunk of my athletes. And then you also have, people doing time goals and people running marathons or people doing half marathons. But I do think that it's really helpful if you can have a coach while you're starting out or doing, that beginner stuff, because then you learn a lot of really important information from the very beginning that you might not have. And you'll learn it like later, like even your first half marathon, fueling and hydration. And maybe a new runner would just be like, wow, I'm going on these long runs and I'm getting really hungry and like really tired, and like don't know that you're supposed to, have gels during a race or something. So someone to set you up with information before you even get to that point. So you already have like the base of what you're going to need to do or details that you might not have thought of before. So I think for beginner runners, it's almost maybe even more important or the same, but I think it would be super important for beginners.
I don't remember when, back when I first started running, I was probably in middle school and I did have a coach. I think like on the other side of the spectrum, if you're post collegiate or you've been chasing it for a long time, and it doesn't even have to do with speed that much. If you're an experienced runner, I think there still is a case for having a coach. What I found with myself was that not only was I getting injured, but a lot of my seasons were starting to look the same. Like I recycled workouts. I had the same type of build. I would do the same routes. And then it became stale because you start expecting the times that you're going to run. And part of that is kind of soothing and metronomic. And you know that if you do this route in this amount of time, or you complete this workout in this particular way, you're probably this fit to do a race. But things get boring after a while. And I already find that with the coach, like even that first workout my coach gave me, I was like, I've never done this one before. It's added just a little bit of flavor to it. So
Yeah.
if nothing else, I think just to take away the staleness of coaching yourself year after year, because it becomes hard to think of new plans and programs, and also to find your weak spots, right? Like I'm not really sure what my weak spots are, right? That's why they're my weak spots. Maybe I'm not doing enough hills, or maybe I'm getting to my 10K race without enough threshold work. Like, I don't know. I ran for a long time and now I have my opinions, but who knows if they're actually right. So I think even for this side of the spectrum, the second set of eyes is probably good.
Yeah, you're offloading that uncertainty and that responsibility you would have to take upon yourself to figure out how to reprogram your training so that it's not stale, so that it's fun and energizing again. Instead, you can just turn to a coach, a person that you're paying, which we'll get into in a second. And you can say to them, I'm getting bored of these workouts, or I want to do something a little different, or like I need a new challenge, or let's try a different goal this season. And they can come up with some ideas. And that's their job. And you don't have to make that your responsibility anymore, which is kind of nice, right? Maybe they might recommend like, hey, you just did 4 marathon seasons in a row. Maybe we take a season off and we just focus on 5Ks or
speed.
Yeah, exactly. And here's some workouts that we can do to improve your speed. And this is our plan. And this is when here's some race suggestions. I think also a coach tends to be pretty, if you're dealing with a person in person, they tend to be pretty plugged into the community as well. perhaps more so than you are. And maybe they know of some races that you would have never considered, and they can pitch those to you as like fitting nicely in your program, where those are things that you don't have to think about anymore, which is nice. And so let's talk about money. I think this is a big mystery, and this is going to vary wildly depending on where you are in the world, what level of coaching you want, whether or not you can have access to this person on a regular basis, or they're just going to provide you with a plan. If it's virtual, if it's an online coach, if it's a coach in person, if it's a club or a group setting versus one-on-one coaching. Just what should we anticipate to pay here? Like, what's the cost going to be? Say I'm new to running and I want to hire a coach. Let's start with virtually. Let's start with an online coach who's going to provide me with a plan and some basic feedback on a regular basis. Like, Katelyn, what's the ballpark? What should I be looking for?
Let me see. When I did some research, when I did, every once in a while, I kind of like to go out and see what's going on. It varies so much, Michael. Yeah. It's like you're going to start around maybe $100, and there are people paying $300-$400 a month. Yeah. Depending on, or more if you want, someone who's maybe an elite runner and they have, the name. Or it's a big coaching organization and they have the name, and you want a specific coach, and there are different tiers and people are more expensive. But I think the most important thing is to just make sure that you're getting what you're looking for, because there are all of those different options out there, like you just mentioned. I mean, you could have someone that, you have an initial call and you listen to them and they want you to you want a plan, and they make you a plan, and then that's it. But to me, it's like, why almost have a coach if you're just going to, get the plan? I kind of feel like if you're out there, and I know we might get into this more a little later about like what to look for, but like, what about what to look for, not in the coach as a person yet, but what to look for in the package? Like in my experience, I think that you're going to want to look for someone who you're actually going to have sit downs with a couple times a month, right? So you can actually have, Zoom calls. And that's what I think that's my favorite part of coaching, are those Zoom calls. Like I do twice a month with every athlete, and we actually have a sit down and we can go over everything. They can bring, questions. I look at their, analyze their training, and those two sit downs are super fun. And exciting, and I really look forward to them. But also a coach who's going to let you, what if I have a question within those 15 days? So I'm very open that people can just like write me anytime. Some other coaches may not be, but just write me anytime, and when I see the message, I'll get right back to you. So you can also have like that kind of communication, because if an athlete has a question, like if Alex wasn't quite sure about something, about his training session for that day, of course you want your coach to always kind of be like checking in to see if there are any messages pending, because you might have a question about what's happening the next day. So have someone there who can kind of like, who's going to be on top of it, and you can have a lot of communication. So I think when people look for a coach, say, okay, look at the different packages, because they really do line that out. They say, okay, I'll give you one call a week for 40 minutes, or I'll give you this. And that's usually broken down in there. And if not, make sure that you ask to make sure that you'll get like the attention that you want and that you need to be successful.
Yeah. When you think about $100 a week, I mean, that sounds like a lot, no, a month. $100 a month. Sorry. It sounds like, I mean, it's not nothing. It's not a lot of money, but it's not nothing. You think about that. I almost would be skeptical of a coach that charges so little. And the reason why is when you break down how much time they're potentially putting into this. So $100 a month would be $25 a week. And so that means, say they're advertising that they're spending an hour a week on you, on looking at, you're logging your runs, you're either sharing them on Strava, or you're using Training Peaks or some other online, or you're just filling in a spreadsheet, a Google sheet or whatever. And they're supposed to be looking at that, kind of analyzing it a bit. And maybe even there's like a feedback check-in session, a Zoom call or whatever. $25 an hour is not very much money for a highly skilled individual. So exactly. I would almost be like wondering, like, what's this person all about if they're charging me that little? Yep. Now the flip is, if they're charging you a significant amount of money, you have to ask yourself, is this worth it? And it better be, right? Especially if it's at the way higher end of things. Yeah, so in-person coaching versus online coaching, does it even matter anymore? Has like in the in the post-COVID Zoom era, are we all like are we all good with online coaching? Is it equal? What do you guys feel? How do you
Yeah, to me, it's fine. I mean, like, again, if I were looking for form improvements and someone to tell me what to do with my arms, if I was a total beginner, maybe I would gravitate more towards in person. So far, to me, virtual is totally fine. I mean, ideally, you have a running group in your city and a coach who is the coach of this running group in your city, and you go there college style and you train every Tuesday and Friday or whatever. But I don't think that's the reality for most people. And to me, virtual has been working well so far. As long as there is that quick, clear connection that I can feel like after my workout, I say, hey, this hurt today. What should I do about this? And then you have an answer before tomorrow. With that,
Yep.
to me, virtual is fine.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of funny because thinking about that we're going to talk about coaching today, like I do both, which is, the virtual athletes that I have has worked out really, really well. And I feel it's funny. I feel like I spend almost more time with them one on one than I do with, if you've listened to the podcast, you know that my husband and I have a running club in Costa Rica, a trail running club. The people that I train online, it's mostly or all right now road running. But the difference is that we get together here Tuesday mornings and Wednesday mornings and well, because we have it in different parts of the country, so different days. My husband goes and gives classes in different areas. Um, and so that is nice because you have the group is together. They motivate each other during the workouts. The coach is there looking at you. My husband's there and he's, checking out the form and looking at cadence and just anything that might be a red flag. And they're kind of like motivating the runners. We see them on two long runs a month. And so that's kind of fun. It's a very also social atmosphere, like a wonderful social atmosphere where people have made, plenty of friends. And I think I've mentioned husband and wives out of this, like couples, that's what I wanted to say. Couples have sprouted from it. Um, and so it also has like that social aspect of it. But I feel like the worlds are helpful, successful but very different. So you've got that where you actually get to see people, but the one-on-one virtual, I do almost feel like I connect even a little more personally because I'm not with a big group with everyone all the time. It's like that one-on-one time. And if I do, often when I have new runners, I do like to ask for specific videos. So that's kind of a workaround for the form thing. Like if I just to see something, because running form is very sort of, there's a lot of debate over whether how much form matters, but obviously a big red flag, over striding or like a very strange arm swing. Like I can see those things in videos and mention them to my athletes online. So that's helped me a lot too. Technology today has helped with that kind of stuff. But I think it's more of like the social being in a group atmosphere. If that's what motivates you, then looking for a group, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, I would say one little last piece to that is ask a prospective coach how many athletes they have, and if they have more than, I don't know, like if they have a lot of athletes and they don't have other coaches working with them and they're claiming to you like, no, I'm going to like dedicate 1 hour, 2 hours a week to you. You got to do the math in your head. And you're like, they've got 75 athletes and they claim they're going to dedicate 2 hours a week to me. It's like, do the math.
No.
That doesn't make any sense unless they don't sleep. So I would be careful of that. So that leads me into the next question, which is when you're seeking a coach, how do you go about knowing that they're going to be the right fit? How do you vet them? Is it okay to ask them for references? How do you know they're qualified? Like, how do you know they're legit? Because there's a million coaches out there, especially in the recreational running world. I think there are a lot of coaches for recreational road runners in particular, but also trail as well, where like, do they have a whole lot more experience than just your average runner that's been running for say 10 or 15 or 20 years? Maybe not. Like, so how do we know that this person's like a coach you should be handing money over to on a regular basis?
I think we're lucky here in Canada that Canada's a big country geographically, but population wise, it's much smaller than the States. And you get to a point where you know people who know people. So for me, what's worked well is non-official references, but just asking people. I don't think I would have hired a coach who hadn't coached anybody that I had ever heard of. I need to know. I need to know of someone who's gone through the process. That's worked for me. In the States, that's probably a lot harder, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I would say a starting point would be ask for credentials, qualifications, if
Yep.
they've taken some coaching courses.
Yep.
And then I'd ask, how long they've been doing this for. I would ask for references. Like, I don't think you should be embarrassed to say, you would do it in any other hiring practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Ask them for references, a couple of athletes, past or present, that they've coached. Maybe ask them what their philosophy is, even if you don't know yourself, ask them and see what they say, and then you can Google it afterwards. If they're like, I'm a big believer in the Lydiard method, it's like, okay, I don't know what the Lydiard method is, but you can Google that and you'll discover who Arthur Lydiard was. And if they say they're a believer in the Lydiard method and you're trying to train for a marathon, it's a good starting point. But yeah, you can do that. You can ask to speak to some of the references. You can do a trial, maybe, that sort of thing. I think it's totally fine to ask for those things.
Yeah, I think there are two parts to this. I think that there's, their credentials and the references of athletes, or hopefully even they found you through another athlete, which has happened to me a lot, which is really nice, because then you're like, okay, well, someone told you to call me specifically and you just didn't find me somewhere else. But other than that, you want to make sure that not only do they have the credentials and that they have good references, but they're the right fit for you. And I think that like what I like to do with athletes that are or runners that are thinking of training with me is I always like to do that initial Zoom call so they get to know me. They say, no strings attached. Like, let's chat. Let's figure out if you like my philosophy, my method. If you feel like I'd be the right person for you, I can tell you a little about me. You can tell me a little bit about you. What's your goal? And we can kind of see if they would be a person who would be interested in working with, my type of personality or my type of coaching method. And maybe they need someone who's a little more tough love than I am. I don't know if you guys can tell, but you wouldn't expect too much tough love, I think, from me.
Unless we're on the running trail, right?
Unless you're my competitor. Yes, then there's no love.
Then it's all elbows out. Yeah.
We've heard of the dark side of Katelyn.
That's right. But I think it's important that your athlete also chooses you, because you have to mesh personality wise too, just a bit. I know it's just helped. Those calls have helped a lot, I think, when making that decision.
Right. And Katelyn, you're a coach, so you can attest to this. I feel like the athlete also has a bit of a job in that recruitment process too, is that they have to show the coach that they're serious about it to an extent, right?
Yes.
Sometimes I find we get into this thought that at the end of the day, for most of us, the great majority of us, running is a hobby. So we go into the world looking for a coach, and maybe we'll settle for the coach that charges $20 a month and sends you one message a month, and which is basically a thumbs up emoji. And we're not taking it all that seriously. I think that's a mistake. Even if you're not fast by your own standards or whatever, you've chosen to invest in a coach. You've chosen to spend at least $100, maybe more. The coach probably also wants to know that you'll be serious about this too, and you'll actually do the workouts, right? Like, a coach can also refuse an athlete, right?
Yes.
I was going to say, I don't want to put Katelyn on the spot, but it's like, have you ever done that Zoom call, the initial call, and you're just thinking to yourself, like, I'm getting a real no feeling from this person right now. I'm like, I don't want to say yes to them.
I'm going to be 100% honest, and it's going to sound like I'm not being honest. So far, it hasn't happened. Like, I haven't had an initial conversation with someone and I'm like, oh no, I really wouldn't like to train this person. It's actually been like, I always get off the phone and I turn to and I'm like, wow, that person was so nice. I think this is going to be so much fun. Like, it hasn't happened yet. Now, while training athletes over a bunch of time, there have been moments where I'm like, okay,
why did I take this person on?
Is it time to break up?
Oh, that's a great way to kind of to put a bow in all of this, is like, how do you break up with if it's not working out? right? You just don't feel like maybe they don't have enough time for you, or the personalities aren't meshing, or you've lost faith in their program. How do you break up with your coach?
I literally, as a coach, and that if this were to happen to me and someone needed to break up with me, I would say I would rather them be honest and tell me like, this method, or I just really feel like it's not working for me. Like, yeah, of course, not everyone, at least I don't have the personality where I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, no problem, whatever. Of course I'm going to feel a little disheartened. Like, okay, well, I wasn't a great match for this person for some reason, but I prefer them to be honest about it, and maybe I can even kind of lead them in the right direction. Like, they're like, no, I want someone a little meaner, who's gonna, heckle me when I'm right. I don't know, like something,
Yeah.
some people like a lot of pressure, maybe, and they would say, maybe you don't push me hard enough, or I don't know. I think I push people, but maybe you don't push me hard enough, or I need this, and yeah, might feel a little like, okay, but I think I would understand. I know I would understand, and I would rather someone like it, but it's got to be hard. I mean, if I had to break up with a coach, I would feel horrible about it. So I guess it's got to be tough. What about you guys?
Mm. Well, yeah, I feel like before breaking up with the coach, I feel like it could be like a rash thing to do if you're not running well or if you're getting injured. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know if either of you I know Michael is a hockey fan. The NHL is notorious for that. As soon as a team stops winning, they fire the coach. It's always the coach.
Mm-hmm.
I would like discourage runners to fire a coach real quickly, because you do have off seasons.
Yeah.
If it comes to the point where you really think the coach is the issue or you're not meshing, first ask yourself why you think that is. And when you've come up with a pretty solid answer, and you're convinced that the coach is somewhat in the way of what you want to do, well, then you have to be honest about it. And either it's, listen, I don't want to take running seriously anymore. I want to go to in another direction. I need to take some
Mm-hmm.
time for myself, see what I want to do. But don't do a wishy-washy thing. Don't court other coaches. While I knew of some guy back in the day who had two coaches and was weighing out the
Oh,
other
Oh,
both training
yeah.
plans and doing every single run
I've
from
seen
both
it.
coaches.
I have encountered
I've
this as
seen it.
well. I have
Mm-hmm.
encountered this in my own training group in the past, where someone was had a little side action with the side coach, and they were doing the it's like the buffet style training plans. Like, I like a little of this one and a little of this
Mm-hmm.
one, and it's like, that's not the idea of a training plan,
It's not how it works,
Yeah,
friends.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say that if you're thinking, if things are not going well, look in the mirror first and ask yourself some tough questions about, did you follow the plan?
Uh-huh.
Did you really follow the plan? Not just the numbers, but even the, like, if it's supposed to be an easy run, did you actually run easy, or you run a little too hard on the easy days? And is that the reason why you ended up burned out and didn't perform in your goal race in the end? Like, ask yourself these tough questions
Yeah.
before you blame it on somebody else. But in some cases, it's just not a good personality fit. And I think that coaching is as much therapy as it is
Yep.
Totally.
guiding someone through a program to become a better runner. It's also working with them and their fears and their anxieties and their confidence or lack of confidence, and talking them through the emotional, psychological challenges of distance running. I think it's a huge component of it. And that is
Yes,
where
it is.
maybe things work or don't jive between two people. It definitely needs to be a good personality fit as well, which is something you only
Yep.
find out over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, you've carefully danced around the question that at some point we were going to send your way so we have a Slack where we plan these conversations before talking.
Yes.
We don't just show up and talk. And we're like, coaching would be a really nice topic, because Katelyn, you are a coach. Alex, I've just
Mm-hmm.
hired a coach, and Michael, you're self-coached. And then Michael goes, what I do is not
Yeah,
exactly
same.
Nope.
self-coaching. And so I'm wondering, are you like Ryan Halling this? Are you coached by the spiritual forces or what's happening here?
Yes, please do tell.
I'm coached
Expand on
by the
that.
G_D. No, I just feel it every day. I wake up and I say, what should I do today? Just tell me,
No,
tell higher power, tell me what I should do. And it's like
no.
10 miles easy. I'm like, yes, another 10 miles easy. It's been 46 10 miles easy days in a row. No, no, actually it's more complex than that. I basically exist within it's a, it's sort of like an anarchist collective. You guys are gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna have to Google this now.
The Ryan Hall method's starting to sound pretty good to
Yeah,
me.
it is. So I am part of a training group. It's a group of like-minded individuals who we now all have quite a bit of experience distance running, many years of experience of distance running, and we build a program together, and we all have feedback and input into how the program is going to look. There's one guy in particular who has got a coaching background. He's done some coaching certification. He's older than the rest of us. He's the guy who he's the group elder and is very experienced distance runner and endurance athlete, and also a total science of sport nerd as well. He's the guy who's going to spend the time reading about double threshold workouts and whether or not there's something that's applicable for someone of our ability level and that sort of thing. And basically before every season we get together, we talk about the training plan, what went well, what didn't. We provide our input. We make changes if necessary. We modify, and we try as much as possible to stay in sync in terms of our training for the following season. Now, this is a group that I've been a part of for over 10 years now, and I was in a club system before where there was a coach and a club, and I was running in a larger running club here in Toronto, and that was great too. Being part of a club is great as well. But we sort of broke off and started doing our own thing. Our numbers have dwindled over the last 10 or 12 years because we're all roughly the same age and life catches up to you. You've scratched the itch of those goals maybe and moved on from running at a certain point, or you've had kids and they've taken you away. I know I was sort of pulled away from being really focused on running for a few years when my kid was really young. Or you just age out for some of the people that were a little bit older in our group. So our numbers have thinned out over the years, but there's still a core group of guys that I run with, and we do the same thing. And we basically have been developing this program for a decade that really works for us and has produced a lot of really great results. So I'm not self-coached. And also this group works as a feedback, as I was going to say feedback loop, but that's probably not the correct. They work as an echo chamber. Where they just tell me what I want to hear, and I just say it, and they repeat it to me. No, it's actually quite the opposite. We keep each other in check, and got a WhatsApp channel where we go back and forth about different ideas, and also talking about different races we might want to do, and it's a very valuable relationship. And I've developed really deep friendships with these people as well over the years and trust them deeply. So if I have questions or concerns or uncertainty, going through this weird point in your life, you're in your 40s and you're thinking about when is the end? As an example, I was talking yesterday, this is a little name drop here. I was talking to the Canadian Olympian Melindy Elmore yesterday. Her and I are the same age, and she's 44. She's running in Paris. She's the only woman representing Canada in the marathon this Olympics. Unfortunately, it would have been awesome if there were 3, but it's just her.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
We were talking about kind of when do you know when it's you're going to start, when is the end? When are you going to start? When is father time going to catch up to you? And it's unknown, right? So that's an insecurity or an uncertainty that someone like myself and a couple of my peers have in the back of our mind right now. And it's a conversation we have. And it's how are we going to know? So it's valuable to have others that you run with on a regular basis to be a sounding board.
No, it
That's what
sounds
I'd
like
say.
a good community, though. I mean, you have a great close-knit community, help, I mean, training plan, everything. So in a way, you're kind of being coached.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's been
Yeah.
different personalities over the years, and some of
Yeah.
it's been oil and vinegar, and some of it's been pretty awkward and not worked out with certain people. And that's just any sort of micro society, right?
Right.
Yeah. So,
But it's like a college team 20 years into the future, which I think a lot of runners try to recreate, that camaraderie of not just running by yourself, but running with a group of people.
Yeah.
And that's some of the
That's
best,
nice.
the best runs that I've had is with a group. I mean, we probably didn't entertain such existential questions, but we became tight nonetheless.
you will once you get to my age. Once you start realizing that there's no turning back, you've got to just
It
keep
gets
marching
dark,
forward.
Alex.
Oh God, I'm so
It
scared.
gets dark.
Yeah.
You got a ways to go. Don't worry.
It's a dark world out there, Alex. All right, guys. I think we have more than covered the coaching. I think the takeaway is if you don't have one, get a coach. What's the worst that could happen? You waste a couple of bucks and you experience a different training plan than you would have, put yourself through. And best case scenario, it's PRs left and right. It's a great, healthy dynamic with a new group of people or a new individual. And you learn some things about running along the way. All right. So, Alex, you've teased your upcoming video. It is...
my 5 favorite early season workouts. I was going to make the 5 favorite workouts bar
cool.
none, but then there was too much variability. You have your sharpening workouts, you have your long half marathon workouts. And I thought, okay, no, this is like, because I'm in the phase right now, and I think a lot of people are in the phase right now where they've just started workouts for a fall race. And whether that's a 5K or a marathon, it'll probably resemble each other, these training plans. You mentioned one of them earlier in the podcast. So these are workouts that are pretty accessible to everyone, no matter your skill level, no matter your distance that you're training for. And I've ranked them from 5 to 1. And
Oh, I can't
that's
wait to
coming
see
out
that.
early next week.
Awesome. That's going to be a good one. Can't wait.
And Katelyn, we've got to plug our summer running challenge where
Yes, I'm signed up.
you're signed up. Good. It
Yes.
starts soon. It starts next week, mid July. Get in on that. It's a fun running challenge. It's a first for us. We're trying it out. And you get a sweet marathon handbook t-shirt. And if you're watching the video version of this, Alex is wearing one right now and
Yeah,
it looks good.
it does.
And we've got a slew of prizes. We've got a bunch of brand relationships, some shoes. There's going to be a bunch of different things. We're getting new prizing coming in every single day. There's going to be little micro challenges along the way. It's pretty neat. You can sign up for our summer run challenge on the site and through our newsletter, which goes out Monday to Friday, 5 times a week, 5:05 a.m. Eastern time in your inbox every morning. Make sure you sign up for that and you'll find the summer running challenge there, as well as links to Alex's YouTube videos and different stories that we do every single day. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Till next week.